The sun was a molten orange, sinking low over the dusty village roads, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper secrets as it touched every crumbling wall and dry thatched roof. Kwame Nkrumah Mensah leaned against the sleek black hood of his sports car, the engine still warm, eyes scanning the market square with the detached amusement of someone who felt untouchable. His friends had dared him to a bet: marry a poor African girl from the village without revealing his identity, and he had accepted, the thrill of control coursing through him. No one knew what he was capable of. No one could guess that the arrogant laughter he wore so easily masked a deep, gnawing insecurity. He adjusted his cufflinks and smiled, imagining the shock on their faces when he walked out of this arrangement unscathed, victorious in a game they all thought they controlled. Ama Serwa Botang was moving slowly through the marketplace, her woven basket balanced carefully on her head, each step measured. The smell of roasted maize mixed with the dust and heat, and the chatter of women bargaining over tomatoes and yams filled the air. Her mind was elsewhere, already planning the small meals she would make that evening for her grandmother. There was a quiet dignity in her posture, a grace born of years learning to survive and to remain unnoticed. She kept her dark, almond-shaped eyes focused, even as whispers and curious glances followed her. People in the village had noticed her intelligence, her calm way of walking through life, but they had no idea that the girl they dismissed as poor carried within her the legacy of wealth and lineage they could never imagine. When Kwame first saw Ama, it was from across the bustling market. She was kneeling to adjust a sandal on a child, her small, worn dress catching the sun, her face a portrait of serenity and focus. His laughter had been almost inaudible, a sharp sound swallowed by the market's chaos, but the sharp tilt of his head, the amused flicker in his eyes, betrayed the thrill he felt. "She's perfect," he murmured, though not to himself. This was a proclamation. Perfect for a bet, perfect for humiliation. He approached her with the casual arrogance of someone used to getting everything he wanted. "Excuse me," he said smoothly, bowing slightly in a manner that made the village children giggle. Ama looked up, her almond-shaped eyes locking with his for a brief, tense moment. There was a spark of suspicion there, a cautious awareness that she did not owe him her attention, nor did she plan to surrender it lightly. "I'm Kwame," he continued, extending a hand polished with designer leather gloves. The sweat on her palms was no match for the cool confidence radiating from him. "I'm Ama," she replied simply, keeping her voice neutral, masking the wariness that flickered through her chest. She had learned long ago not to be too trusting, especially when strangers arrived with bright smiles and sparkling eyes in a village where every gesture carried weight. Kwame smiled, a slow, knowing smile. He was fascinated not by her beauty, which was undeniable, but by the strength she exuded without effort. He had always been drawn to challenges, to situations where the outcome was uncertain. The bet whispered at him like a forbidden melody: make her yours, publicly, without revealing who you truly were, and watch the ripple of disbelief as your friends celebrated your triumph. Ama, oblivious to the bet, accepted his polite insistence over weeks of meetings. She was cautious, but not cruel, and there was a polite curiosity that kept her from walking away immediately. She admired his intelligence in conversation, the way he could discuss books, business, and politics effortlessly, though she felt no warmth behind his words, only the polished surface of charm. Yet beneath her calm exterior, a quiet rebellion brewed. She did not bend easily, and her instincts whispered that the man who sought her hand carried shadows he would rather hide. The day of their marriage arrived with the predictable spectacle of grandeur. Kwame's friends and family gathered in his lavish city estate, the air thick with the scent of expensive perfumes and the metallic tingle of wealth. Ama walked in wearing a modest dress she had sewn herself, the simplicity stark against the gilded room, and for the first time, Kwame felt an unusual thrill. This was not humiliation, as he had expected. There was something unnerving about her calmness, her dignity, her refusal to be cowed by wealth or spectacle. The cameras flashed, the cousins whispered, and the bet hung invisibly over the room, like a storm cloud threatening to break. Kwame's father, Nana Kwesi Mensah, watched from the edge of the ceremony, his piercing eyes measuring every gesture, every expression. The old man was a titan in the business world, unyielding, traditional, a man who valued reputation above all. He expected Kwame's wife to be a reflection of wealth, status, or convenience. Instead, he saw Amma, a quiet, human woman who seemed immune to the trappings of power. His lips pressed into a thin line. The unease was immediate. Days passed, and the tension of the marriage settled into an uneasy rhythm. Kwame reveled in the control he believed he had, while Amma navigated the world of wealth with quiet observation. She saw the fissures beneath the polished surfaces, the impatience in Kwame's eyes when things did not go perfectly, the subtle fear in his father's tone when a business deal faltered, the hushed gossip of staff who sensed an unknown tension. She smiled politely, listened carefully, and kept her secrets close, knowing that the time to reveal them was not yet. The first real moment of humiliation came during a dinner meant to impress a visiting investor. Kwame, eager to display Amma's supposed naivety, asked her to recite a common proverb, expecting the simplicity of her answer to amuse his friends. Instead, Amma's response was precise, eloquent, and filled with insight that left the investors nodding, impressed. The laughter Kwame had anticipated never came. Instead, he felt a flicker of unease, a recognition that perhaps he had underestimated the girl who seemed so fragile. But it was only the beginning. Weeks later, Amma received a letter in her writing that none in the household could decipher, a message from a lawyer revealing that she held the rights to a vast inheritance, the remnants of her family's wealth kept hidden to protect her from dangerous relatives years ago. When she revealed this to Kwame, his initial reaction was disbelief, followed by anger, and then an unsettling fascination. The bet that seemed so secure crumbled in the face of reality. Kwame's carefully constructed world began to unravel as Amma's confidence and intelligence forced him to confront his own insecurities. He realized that the girl he had married for amusement was not only his intellectual equal, but potentially superior, and the shock of her real identity rippled through every corner of his life. His father, witnessing the revelation, could not hide his astonishment, and the power dynamics of the family shifted in ways Kwame never anticipated. Amma did not gloat, but she did not hide her satisfaction. Her dignity remained intact, and the quiet force of her presence became undeniable. She had been underestimated, dismissed, and used as a pawn in a cruel game, but now the truth stood exposed. The girl from the village, the girl who seemed so ordinary, carried the weight of lineage, intelligence, and moral strength that none had anticipated. Kwame, faced with the reality of Amma's brilliance and hidden wealth, was forced into a reckoning. The arrogance that had driven him to manipulate, to bet, to seek control, met a force it could not dominate. In the privacy of their home, away from family and whispers, he looked at Amma and saw not a prize, not a bet won or lost, but a woman who had changed the trajectory of his life entirely. His mind, once preoccupied with games and pride, now wrestled with admiration, respect, and a faint, uncomfortable awareness of humility. The village, unaware of the internal battles being waged in gleaming city towers, continued in its rhythms, dusty roads, market chatter, children's laughter. But for those who had witnessed Amma's rise, the story would become legend. A girl underestimated, a man humbled, a revelation so complete it reshaped family, fortune, and respect. And in that quiet, cinematic moment, with the golden sun setting over the city skyline, Kwame realized the truth he could no longer deny. The game had ended, and he had lost, not to Amma's wealth, but to her integrity, her intelligence, and the unshakable dignity that no bet could ever diminish.
The days that followed were a quiet storm. Kwame moved through the house with a new wariness, each glance at Amma reminding him of how wrong he had been. The bet, once a source of amusement, had become a ghost that haunted him with every polite smile she offered. She carried herself as if nothing had changed, yet in her eyes danced the knowledge of her hidden triumph. It was not wealth alone that gave her power. It was her mastery over perception, her unshakable self-possession, and the quiet way she had dismantled his arrogance without a single word of confrontation. Amma began to take control of her life in subtle ways. She reorganized household affairs, suggested new investment strategies, and handled staff disputes with an authority that even Kwame could not ignore. Each gesture reminded him that she was no ordinary woman, that the simplicity he had mocked was a deliberate armor, and that the brilliance beneath it demanded recognition. Kwame found himself studying her in private moments, noticing how her hands moved with careful precision, how her eyes measured without judgment, how her calm voice could redirect tension without raising it. The tension between them grew as Kwame struggled to reconcile pride with admiration. For the first time, he questioned the values he had been raised to hold above all else: power, wealth, and reputation. Here was a woman who had been written off by the world as poor and powerless, yet she commanded the respect of everyone she touched, not through money, not through manipulation, but through sheer presence. He had married her for sport, and now he found himself falling, slowly and unexpectedly, into the quiet gravity of love. The turning point came during a gala dinner for the family's business associates. Nana Kwesi Mensah, ever the stoic patriarch, introduced Amma formally to the board, expecting perhaps mild discomfort or nervousness. Instead, Amma spoke with clarity, wit, and insight that left the room silent. Proposals she made were met with nods. Questions she asked revealed hidden risks others had overlooked. Kwame's father, once skeptical, now looked at her with a mixture of awe and reluctant respect. And in that moment, Kwame realized he had lost the bet entirely, not because he had failed to manipulate her, but because he had underestimated her intelligence, her strength, and the power of her quiet dignity. At home that evening, after the last guest had left, Amma sat by the window, the city lights reflected in her deep eyes. Kwame approached her cautiously, unsure if his pride could bear the conversation. "Amma, he began, and she turned to face him, serene but commanding. "You don't have to say anything," she replied softly, her voice carrying both forgiveness and a challenge. "You need to learn humility, Kwame. That lesson, that was always yours to take, not mine to give." He sank into the chair beside her, the weight of his own arrogance pressing heavily on his shoulders. In the stillness of the room, with the faint hum of the city below, he understood something profound. The woman he had sought to control had instead taught him the power of respect, integrity, and love earned honestly. Amma's victory was not the inheritance, not the revelation, not even the public shock. It was the reclamation of her identity and dignity in a world that had underestimated her. Kwame reached out, holding her hand, and felt the warmth of a life that had been hidden from him until now. The bet was gone, irrelevant, meaningless, but in its place rose a partnership forged in the fires of challenge, humility, and truth. They had both been transformed, and the quiet village girl now stood as an equal to the man who had once tried to make her a pawn. The story of Amma and Kwame would be remembered in hushed conversations, in village markets, in the whispers of those who knew that sometimes the most powerful victories were not won with money or manipulation, but with courage, patience, and unwavering self-respect. The girl who seemed powerless had rewritten the rules of the game entirely, leaving a legacy of strength and dignity that no one could ever erase. And as the final golden light of sunset faded from the city, Amma looked out over the skyline, knowing that she had claimed her rightful place, not as a prize, not as a secret, but as herself. Kwame stood silently beside her, learning that the most important victories in life were not those you could boast about, but those you earned through respect, understanding, and love. If you felt the twists, emotional depth, and cinematic drama in this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to African Heritage Tales for more powerful African stories that will shock, inspire, and move you. Share your thoughts. What would you have done in Kwame's shoes? Every story reminds us that dignity, courage, and truth always have the final word.